Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the third and final event of our Fall 2022 seminar series, today created by the PDMI Workshop Council, a look at best-in-class customer service. We welcome all of you to today's event, PDMI members and non-members alike. If you're not a PDMI member but are attending today, we'd love to have you consider joining the association. There's no better way to support the mission of the PDMI than joining and sharing your voice in the direction of the industry. In the handouts tab of your control panel, you'll find our latest PDMI membership brochure. I urge you to download it, flip through it, and contact any of our team members should you desire more information. One more housekeeping note, the group will be answering questions from the audience at the end of the day's session. But you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the webinar. Today, you're going to hear from experts about how customer service affects loyalty and how the customer experience is paramount. Learn how to understand your customer service needs and get insider tips on how to push for the most for your customer support. Consumers are putting a premium on customer service and pushing performance marketers to do the same. Getting best-in-class customer service is the only way to ensure that you, as a marketer, agency, or other performance marketing leader, are in the best position to succeed in servicing your own customers. Today, the PDMI Workshop Council member Lori Zeller, Managing Partner of THOR Associates, is here to host this conversation, and joining her are Zach Green, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at FirstMile, Michael Johnson, Vice President of Business Development at Paymerang, Chris Reinmuth, Executive Vice President of Business Development at FlexPay, and we're hoping to add Shane Allor, Account Executive at Kount, an Equifax company, once we figure out some technical problems that he's having. Thanks to each of you for joining us. Lori, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. What really seems to be an issue in today's marketing landscape hopefully will be solved by the insight and brilliance of the panelists on our webinar today. One of the things that led us to this conversation, let's say, is the idea that customer experience and customer service has to join together both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes so that there's brand loyalty. We came up with a list of questions, and I think we'll start with Michael at Paymerang. And what I'd like, Michael, for you to talk about is, what does customer experience mean to you in terms of, because this is very important for all of us, B2B marketing and D2C, and how did the global pandemic change the way customer experiences are, the user experience, and what we do as businesses to relate to the customer and then provide performance marketing?
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for having me on today. I think to start with the question is that, why do people call, right? What's the beginning of it? And typically people are calling because they're having an issue. They've got something they want to have resolved, and I think, unfortunately, we've all, when we pick up the phone to call, we've all had some bad experiences with customer service. Either we're on hold for a long time to get through, we're already frustrated when we're calling. So, I think it's really important for all of us when we're looking to make sure our customers have a really good experience, that we actually take a step back and look at what it would be like for us if we were to call in and be in the same experience as as that person calling in. So I think it's really important for us to look overall at what the goal at the end of the call is going to be, and make sure that we're actually solving their issue when they do call. I think that a lot of us forget that we're trying to run and answer questions, but at the end of the day, are we actually solving the problem that they're calling in for? As far as, what kind of happened with COVID and the experience, I think everyone's market is a little bit different. With us, we expanded 300%, through COVID. It was amazing. But with that, we had a lot of challenges, challenges of hiring the right people, getting, the people trained fast enough to get up and running. Also getting people that were able to understand the question that was coming in. So we spent a lot of time in hiring and making sure that we did hire the right staff, that we weren't just filling a seat, that we were, at the end of the day, that we were hiring the right people to help resolve the issues that we saw coming in.
Well, that's a great point. So what I'm going to do is now shift this over. So you're with Paymerang, which is an automation company. Let's hear from Chris Reinmuth, who actually is with FlexPay, and what your company did to provide not only trust, but to build relationships both with your customers, and also how did that help the brands that you service deal with fraud and chargebacks and returns? Because at the end of the day, lifetime value really is what we're doing as marketers. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, we dealt with it. If you look at the industry today, there's a $30 billion cost to bring to the banks for approved for fraud, right? It's a $400 billion issue. So our goal at FlexPay is to provide value for lifetime value to the customers. So if you look at declines today, declines happen in a lot of different environments. And FlexPay's main purpose is to protect the customer experience and provide lost revenue to merchants. The lost revenue, as I pointed out, is a $400 billion issue today. So that's $30 billion to the banks. So when we look at customer experience, there's fatigue, right? Lori, you and I were talking about this last week. There's a lot of fatigue for customers today. And during the pandemic, everybody was really stuck indoors. Everybody was going online. But with that, marketers were very smart, right, to the customers. And so they were hitting them up. And so there became fatigue. And so when we go into customers today, we really want to create a relationship with our merchants. So take like a LegalZoom or Six Flags that they have with their end user. And so we provide a couple different services. One is invisible recovery and one is engaged recovery, where they create a persona, right, and how to engage with that customer. And so, somebody that may be, in their 70s or 80s that, is buying a product, they may actually need to be treated a little bit differently than somebody is, say, in the 20 or 30 that is more proficient receiving a text or an email when they have a lost payment. But let's be honest, if you have a credit card that fails, so like for me, I'm an Alaska Airlines guy, I live in the Northwest. When I go out and buy a ticket, if that credit card declines, I'm not happy. My customer experience with that is not good, and I'm going to start looking for other places to shop, whether it could be a department store or whether it could be an online merchant. So the goal here is to provide, you're talking $400 billion annually. And this does not put into account the lifetime value, right? So that's a $400 billion loss. We have merchants that lose $100 million a year before they put FlexPay on. So again, not to just plug FlexPay, but at the end of the day, we're here to help with customer experience and lifetime value.
No, Chris, please don't, whatever you do, do not plug FlexPay. Zach, tell me, we all practiced last week and I learned a lot from all of you. But Zach, what I'm interested in, because Chris always gives great examples of the loss, the lifetime value, but at FirstMile, your real job, not your job, but the service that FirstMile provides is to actually deliver to the customer. It's really direct to consumer at the end of the day. How do you feel about what Chris said? If you want to push back a little bit, I love that. But if not, tell us what you're thinking about the question I asked.
Yeah, so customer service is it's the whole process, right? And from the time that purchase is made to the time that product is delivered. So in our space, it's all about the physical product and getting it out the door, getting it moving, and what happens between the point that the mouse was clicked and the product was purchased to the time that product arrives at my door. How long does that process take, and what hands are touching that product? And nobody really cares to worry about that. They just know that they clicked a button and they've been trained that, hey, Amazon told me it should be here in 2 to 3 days. But what happens during that process? And so our focus is just trying to make sure that the experience of the customer is a good one, because and the only way we can make it a good one is that they're informed. So communication, and we communicate to our customers through tracking. The failure in customer service that I've seen or customer experience also, is that if that tracking number is not moving, or there's no communication on that tracking. That's where customers start to really see a decline in customer service and customer experience, is there's no communication. And what leads to lack of communication? They print the label, the tracking number exists, the end consumer gets an email that their product should be moving, but yet there's a back order. The product is not in the warehouse. They can't ship it yet.
Supply chain issues also, right? We talked about that.
Right, yeah. So you got a supply chain issue there, or it's also, and what's been talked about is COVID. COVID has kind of brought a new worker in the warehouse, where, you know what, maybe I'll show up today, maybe I won't. I don't really need to rush this product out the door. And that leads to a bad experience from a customer service standpoint, because I don't have as many people picking, packing, and fulfilling the product to get it out the door. So it may take 3 or 4 days to even get that product moving within within the major carrier networks like the post office or FedEx or UPS. And that lack of communication on that tracking number is what really starts to deteriorate the customer experience. And so,
Zach, let me interrupt you. Is that a matter of, and Chris and Michael, I'd love your opinion. Is that a matter of technology and automation? Like, should there be some system behind that lets you know, I order an ironing board from Amazon, it doesn't come, it still doesn't come. And then the third day when it's supposed to have been here, it's still not here. And the really crazy thing, I'm not actually creating a loyalty to the brand. I'm using an ironing board because there's no brand that I want to keep it generic. I'm not loyal to the brand. I'm actually angry with Amazon where I ordered it from. So at the end of the day, Chris, you made a great point in terms of your airline ticket. Zach is making a great point in terms of, how does that product actually get to the consumer? Because why I'm excited to moderate this is I believe that trust, relationships, communication, as you said, Zach, that's really what we're doing. And as marketers, like my side of the coin is the marketing side. It's all about perception. It's about personalization. It's touching and then retouching the consumer so that they come back and either buy again or they don't. So we talked a lot about that experience, but really, who's responsible for the customer? Who is at the end of the day? So Chris, we had a conversation privately about the CEO being the brand ambassador, because at the end of the day, it's his ass on the line. How do the three of you feel about who is responsible so that the customer really is? And then as your businesses grow, how do you help your clients touch that customer or communicate with the CEO? Michael?
I just want to back up 1 second. I think to Zach's point, one of the things is setting the right expectation up front, right? So, if they knew it was supposed to take 5 days, then their expectation is 5 days, but if they think it's going to get there, we were all used to before COVID where, we'd order something on Amazon and be there before we open up the door, and that's not what's happening today. So we need to be proactive with our customers and say, this is what the expectation is going to be. And if it falls outside those parameters, then this is the steps you need to take. But we need to be proactive, and I think setting the right expectations up front is important for all of us, because we deal with less issues if we set the right expectations up front.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback on that, from my perspective, I look at, so whether it's a CEO or CRO, or let's just take a large merchant, like, a Six Flags or a LegalZoom, I've been doing this way too long, so I've dealt with a lot of customers, but my primary focus in the direct response space over the last 25 years has been on the service side. And so the services that I've represented, just like today, have been there to basically be behind the scenes. So whether it's a Guthrie Raker or a Beachbody or whatnot, we want to provide excellence for their team. So usually at the CEO helm on the way down is for them to make the experience with the end user, so that customer seamless, lifetime value seamless. So in Zach's example, time to home, right? It's always been 2 days. Amazon set the parameters, time to home, right? I used to be an investor in a logistics company, and I remember, Zach knows them well. We had one location, We had one location in the United States. We could not get time to home in less than 2.5 days. And so consumers, so now there's 4 locations in that facility, so they can actually get time to home. The same thing, whether it's lost revenue on the decline side, we want to make sure that if that customer, so Chris Reinmuth's Alaska Airlines card declines, he's calling Alaska Airlines. It's not FlexPay behind the scenes fixing that, or a payment processor. It is actually, because they're partnering with them, but we want to make sure that that end user, that merchant, has the technology, whether it's through shipping, whether it's through payment processing, whether it's through revenue enhancement or lost revenue, whether it's through 3PL. That experience is seamless. And supply chain and the global pandemic affected all of that, right? It brought everybody online. It created customer fatigue. We have supply chain issues. Goods aren't getting there. So all of those things are challenged. And so it's this big mess. So I share your enthusiasm, Lori, because I think it's a really important topic. And the last thing I will say is, I wrote this down thinking about this, is we play in a lot of different verticals. So ranging from direct selling to subscription box. And there's a couple key verticals that I've seen over the last 2 years, and Zach and I've talked about this a lot. You would be amazed going into markets of companies that are doing $2.5 billion in top line revenue that are not paying attention to the things that we're talking about today, right? Definitely pre-pandemic and still today, we go in and analyze their statements. They have no idea what their decline recovery efforts are. They are not looking at their shipping rates. I mean, they think they are. They really do not know how to optimize. And so a couple of my partners, and I've talked about 2023 is the year of optimization. And I assure you that people will, with layoffs.
That's the next question. The next question is going to be, what are we doing in 2023 to make this happen? Go ahead, Chris. Continue, please.
Well, I think it's for all of us to talk about. It's a year of optimization. So we're going to consumers today, and we're dealing with, my sales team looks at it and they say, okay, wow, we massive layoffs of companies, 20% layoffs in many companies we're seeing today. So what does that do? Is that, that's consumer spending is going to go down. But for, I think, the people that are on the phone today, it's a really, really ripe opportunity for us to be able to educate our merchants in understanding what they're losing for next year, and they're going to be looking for revenue. So these are things that a lot of companies just aren't talking about. And it's amazing to me that they're not talking about it. So what do we do about it? Well, this is the start. We have to have a conversation. And what we do as a team is we go in and analyze their data and provide an analysis. It's pretty simple.
And Zach, do you do the same? I mean, because I think Chris is dealing with the company, then to the consumer. So my whole thing is, where does the loyalty start and stop? But Zach, you're really right in there. What do you think 2023 is going to bring? And I agree with Chris, actually. It is about optimization. And actually within performance marketing, is there a way to monetize that? That's a good question.
Yeah, and I agree with Chris. I mean, I do think 2023 is the year of optimization, and regardless if the company is ready for it or not, they're going to have to, because there's going to be too many forces. Costs of goods are going up, costs of services are going up, and if they're not at the forefront of optimizing what they're currently doing, they're going to get left behind, or they're going to pay for it. So looking to optimize, from my perspective, how are you shipping the packages? Does it make sense to use a national carrier for all of your shipping, even when you might be shipping it across the street? Why give it to a FedEx if you're shipping it across the street? It doesn't make sense. There are local and regional carriers that do just as good a job in certain areas of the country that you don't necessarily need to use a big national carrier, because why pay for a national fleet of trucks and planes when you're just shipping across the street? So optimizing and making sure that you're shipping packages the right way every single time. And a lot of that has to do with, you mentioned earlier, technology. I mean, a lot has to do with technology. And is that tech helping me make the right decisions at every single label call? And that's, when customers come to us, they're really looking for us to help them optimize their shipping, but also help them optimize time to home. Chris mentioned earlier, time to home is a big thing. Amazon kind of taught us time to home 2 to 3 days. Well, if I have one location, and I'm an e-commerce business, and I have one location how do I get to that time to home 2 to 3 days? Sometimes that's impossible. But Amazon also trained the world to expect free shipping. Well, fast and free is not a thing in shipping. If it's fast, it's not free, and if it's free, it's not fast. So you have to.
I think that's the name of a book. What do you think, Zach? Are you going to write that book?
I should.
You should, right?
I do love the phrase. But yeah, so 2023 is really an opportunity to find a way to set proper expectations, like Mike said earlier. You have to set expectations properly, but also, finding a way within your warehouse, within your technology, to communicate with the consignee in the right amount of time. Because to Chris's point that Chris has made over a number of times, is if you don't start the communication process within a couple days of that mouse click of when they bought the product, you're going to start looking at chargebacks. So you do have to time it right. You have to get communication out that there is a tracking created, that the product is being processed and shipped, but you do have to set right expectations to ensure you give yourself enough runway to get the product out the door and get it moving down the line. You don't want to communicate too fast, because communicating too fast, as soon as you give that consignee or that end consumer the tracking number, their internal, the clock in their head has started that it should arrive soon.
Yeah.
So the longer you can delay that email, that notification that package is on its way, but you can't delay too long or you start to get chargebacks. So you got to find that even balance.
It's a cadence. One of the things, I think everyone who's on the webinar knows that Fern Lee is my partner, and she's a marketer extraordinaire. One of the things that Fern has done throughout her phenomenal career, every time we work with a client, she says to the client, ship me the product as if I am your customer.
Mm-hmm.
She looks at what the box looks like. She looks at the time it takes, the emails, what is in the email. She opens the box. She looks at the collateral materials. If it doesn't make everyone feel happy and, like they're the lucky winner for ordering this product, she's on the phone in 2 seconds and she's changing all of it. So from a marketing point of view, it's the touch points. You're right, Zach. It's about the emails. From the cadence point of view, it's the timing. From the future, it's about optimization. And Mike, you haven't said that much, but being with Paymerang, it's important. The automation, as Zach said, and the technology is in sync. It's hard. It's not easy. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do.
Hey guys, Mike, before you go 1 second, we want to test. Shane is here. Want to test and see if he's actually here. Shane, are you here?
Hey everybody, mic check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, how about that for some customer experience?
And now I'm going to let you resume your previously scheduled broadcast.
The ghost from Christmas past. So Shane, let's have your insight, since everyone's been talking a little bit. Michael was going to answer the question, but Michael, if you don't mind, let's have Shane give us. He knows what we're talking about because he's been listening. You want to comment at all?
Yeah, can you reiterate? Sorry, as I was logging in, I hate to be the customer experience joke guy, but if you could reiterate.
We're actually just talking about the fact that the cadence of technology and how the customer is touched, and how all of us in our own businesses have to deal with setting expectations, and what 2023 is going to bring is optimization. How are we going to make the process better? So you're with Kount, tell everybody, you're with Kount, K-O-U-N-T. You do basically fraud protection, but how does the customer experience work in terms of fraud protection? You want to talk about that a little bit? Because we haven't really touched on that.
Totally. Yeah, and it's a great question. And I think I take it a little bit in a different avenue. It's I take it more in the lens of, I'm a sales guy, but I still live and breathe customer experience day in and day out. Because again, back to the point of what I'm assuming what you guys have been talking about so far, which is there's a strong correlation to lifetime value of a customer. Now, when we talk about fraud prevention, we're talking more so on the business to business side of the house, and customer experience. Why that matters again, back to the lifetime value of the customer, but you're talking to a buyer from a business perspective. So aligning goals and setting the right expectations up front as you start a partnership is really valuable, and creates a lot more stickiness if you do it right. And then down the line, when you start increasing that lifetime value, it's because, gosh, well, in the process when we began this partnership, they really knew our business inside and out, and they were able to offer their service to us as a merchant or as a business provider. They were able to affect our bottom line, which at the end of the day is everyone's goal, from myself as a salesperson to the end merchant within the PDMI organization.
We don't have much time because we want people to be able to ask us questions. So I'm going to state the last question since you're all with me now. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for your time today. The last question is, what are the 2 biggest takeaways you'd have our viewers gain from today's conversation about customer experience and customer service? And how does that relate to trust, relationships, and brand loyalty? Chris, you want to start?
I'll take one. I would say, look at your data. Make sure that you are looking at every single area of your business. And again, I'm speaking on the false decline side. Is the vast majority of declines today in your business, again, it's a $400 billion issue. So even in the direct response space, even if it's a 3% decline on like a customer like Netflix, look at what that does to your bottom line. And so look at it from 2 variables. One, look at it from the revenue that you're losing. We have customers that are losing $80 million a year, and then ultimately look at the lifetime value. So don't just assume it's a cost of doing business.
Brilliant. Michael, you want to talk to the 2 biggest takeaways?
I think a couple things that I heard today from others is this, automation, right? I think one of the things that I always look at is that, before you get there, you need to look at what your bottlenecks are and understand what the bottlenecks are. Why do you need that automation? And, what's that automation going to solve for you? And, I think these both Chris and Zach have brought up some really valid points of where to start looking for that. But for me, I really got to stop and go back and analyze. Like Chris talked about analyzing the data. You need to go back and look at everything and see, why is there an issue and what can I do to fix that issue? And, for me, I'm always going back, and it's all analytics. I'm always looking at it and trying to figure out how can I not only fix it, but what is the direct result of the issue itself? Because usually it's a lot further beyond what we think it is.
Correct. Zach?
Yeah. So I think that a takeaway that I have is just setting proper expectations and communication with the end consumer. Me personally, when I order something online, I typically, it's almost like 2 shots of dopamine, right? I order it and I'm really excited when I order it online. I'm excited to get it, and then I forget about it, and I forgot it's even coming, and then it arrives at my door. It's like, oh, this is the greatest thing. As long as my expectations are set properly at the time of checkout, and I know how long it's going to take, I'm willing to select the free shipping, and I'm okay with 10 days, as long as my expectations are set, because I actually love that second shot of dopamine that, hey, it arrived. I can't even remember what I ordered. So setting proper expectations.
And Shane, do you have I know you joined us a little bit late, but do you want to share maybe either 2 takeaways or the one thing that you think is going to create brand loyalty moving into 2023 based on customer experience and customer service?
No, I think I tagging off of what Zach said. I think one of the notes I took down is kind of through the lens of the market landscape, like it's ever changing. So to Zach's point, as a consumer, there's different buying behaviors in the past, or it's evolved, right? So there's different payment options that now affect customer experience for a merchant or a business, where it's, well, now the expectations for a consumer is I want my good or service immediately, right? Like, how does that affect the customer experience? Like, customer experience organizations now have to be nimble and evolve their strategies to equate for the different buying behaviors that are now trending in the market. And then number two, the other one is how closely tied customer experience is related to top line revenue. So things like, as we kept mentioning on the webinar, is lifetime value of the customer. Recurring revenue is obviously huge because there's stickiness when there is a good relationship with that end customer from a customer experience perspective. And then as well, referral opportunities. It's huge. Who else do they know, right? Like, you can continue to make a name for yourself in the marketplace with a great customer experience arm.
I like it. I think that one of the things that we've touched upon, and everyone can hear me, right? Because I'm having some difficulty.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that's really been very unique for me, like the two takeaways I can say, is that I forget how much goes into what it takes to reach the customer, because we're marketers. We're not doing all of the process behind the scenes. And I am just like blown away by the amount of work it seems like it's starting to take versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So moving forward in all of what we do in performance marketing, it's really interesting that we have to not only pay attention. It seems to me that there's this overlay of how we all work together. And I don't think that happened years ago. I mean, Chris, when you were a baby, remember when you were a baby, Chris? When you were just a young little guy in the industry. Remember when you were with Lidl, and it was like, we're just gonna do what we're doing here, and we would go out and we would talk about it, and it was a no-brainer. It seems to me like all of this is what's happening is far from being a no-brainer anymore. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. Maybe Tom, now it's a good time to open up the floor and we can talk amongst ourselves and answer some questions.
Yeah, I've got 3 pretty solid ones sitting here. So, and they're all kind of round table, round robin. So, everybody take a crack at them. I'm not going to say who should go first. The first one that came in. What one thing do you believe marketers or brands can do to help support service companies improve their role in the customer journey? I guess one bit of advice for your clients is maybe a simple way to say that.
I think for me, it's really understanding your customer. Understanding what their needs are, why they're buying from you, what they want for a result, and the only way you can provide them with the best customer experience is understanding what their ultimate goal is when they're working with you.
That's great. And Mike, I agree 100% with that. I think in the same vein, just to really try to put a bow on it, is creating that persona. We've talked about that a lot. I think Shane's heard us talk about that. Understanding your customer. So in our world, we create a persona, whether it's a customer, if their credit card is declined, are they a 75-year-old person that is not accustomed to being online versus somebody that is very accustomed to being online? Do they receive a text message or an email or a phone call, or do they need another payment plan? So understanding your customer. If you don't understand your customer, then you're really missing out. So leverage your providers. So the FirstMiles of the world, the Paymerangs, the FlexPays, the Counts.
And Lori, I can jump in too and add a comment to that. Working with marketers, you can essentially go to the market with a differentiator strategy if you've got a great customer experience arm within your organization. I know firsthand we like to use that in our strategy, and it's a way to leverage a customer experience organization that's humming pretty darn well as a way to acquire new business too.
That's great.
Second question. What do you believe is the next step in the evolution of providing first-class customer service to end users? Put on your visionary glasses.
Zach, what do you have to say about that, buddy?
There goes Zach.
So I would say that having a, from a warehouse, a e-commerce business perspective and getting product out the door, I would say that next level of customer service is, and it's always going to be communication. I mean, we've talked about communication at nauseum here, but honestly, the more you can utilize technology to help you communicate to your end consumer, and just over communicate. There's some things you don't want to communicate with them. However, making sure that they're in the loop, that they're in the know, that the thing that we see, like the biggest claim opportunity for end consumers of, hey, my package isn't on its way, so I'm going to file a claim and I'm going to essentially write it off and as if it never happened, is that lack of communication, the lack of tracking, the lack of movement, the lack of knowing where it is. The unknown makes me nervous. And so if I don't know where my package is and if it's not moving, then I'm going to take action to protect myself. So utilizing technology to over communicate, I think is probably where customer service and customer experience needs to go, and just utilizing automation in technology.
To that point, I hope it's okay if I just jump in. To that point, what we haven't talked about are returns. So you're talking about getting the package, getting the product, making sure the credit card works, making sure automation, that there's a cadence to the emails. What gets my goat, and I'm sure many of us, is that when you have to make a return, it could be a nightmare. And I didn't hear any of you talk about that. Does anyone have any, to Tom's question, what is it that the end user, the customer, can really feel trust and relationship when there's a problem and they have to return the product? Because that's the other side of this that for me drives me crazy.
Go for it,
Shane. Go ahead, Mike.
Nope. I was gonna say, I think, we talked about this, but we didn't really dive into it. There is such a cost to getting that customer in the first place. We don't want to lose that customer, right? So we need to find out why they're returning that, right? What can we do to save it? So, before we even take that product back, we need to find out, what's wrong and what happened. And, Zach, communication is key. But one of the things that we've all said, and I think we've all noticed it, is that even though we think it's key, we don't do it enough, right? So we need to find out, why they're returning it, what we can do to get them to actually keep it or get it resolved so that we get them the right product that they need. So I again, it's going back to, it's one of those things, I've got, 3 teenage boys, and, the last thing I want to find out is from somebody else that they got pulled over and got a speeding ticket. Then I'm really not too happy. But if they call me and say, hey, Dad, this is what happened, and and then a friend of mine calls me a week later and says, hey, I saw your son get pulled over, I already know about it, right? So I already know how to deal with that situation. And it's the same thing with with product returns. If I know what's wrong, I can probably help them resolve that up front. And again, it goes back to Zach's key thing is communication.
And actually, if I can just add to that, the returns part of this is actually an opportunity to gain brand loyalty. Absolutely. Because if you have a sleek and a returns process that is pretty headache free, you can actually gain a lifetime customer. Because if they know that your returns process is easy, slick, and you're not going to haggle them over it or put up a brick wall, they will come back and buy from you again, or at least they'll seek out opportunities to buy from you again. That is why it's so easy to buy from anyone, because the returns is so easy. So it reduces the risk for me to buy from you. If your returns process is easy, my risk goes down, and I want to return and shop at your store.
Well, Home Depot has that policy. Amazon, with Whole Foods, you just drop off the package. You know who doesn't, which is crazy to me, and they've never changed it? Best Buy only gives you 14 days. I will never buy there ever because who knows in 14 days what's going to happen. So it's, you're right. It has to do with, in terms of returns, who you're, but the problem is also like to get the label to speak to customer service. Sometimes it's a nightmare. It really is. Like, I don't want this. This doesn't fit. I want something online. But you're right. It's about communication, the ease, mitigating the risk. Chris, you have something to say, my friend?
No, I mean, I think you guys have touched on all of that. I mean, I think it still goes back to understanding your customer too. And, returns are a big deal, right? I mean, I remember Lois Grossman of the FTC back in my Lytle FTC days. It used to be the choke point. It's the choke point. And if I can't go after the merchants, then I'm going after the fulfillment houses and I'm going after the payment processors. And if they're going to go ahead and leverage returns to offset their chargebacks, I'm going to start going after return percentages. So it's a big deal. And I think it goes back to the merchants really knowing their customers. And if you know your customers, you're probably going to have fewer returns.
Shane, you want to, we don't see you, but you might have something to say?
Yeah, happy to chime in. I mean, really, the group here touched on the two main points that I was going to bring up already. There's, merchants do so much work up front to acquire that customer. Like, it's very important. So when the opportunity arises, when there's a return issue, I frame it up as an opportunity. It's, hey, you've got an opportunity to retain a loyal customer. The one part too, from my perspective, in the fraud and chargebacks landscape, is if there's not ease to rectify that situation through a merchant, I know as a consumer I can call my bank and issue a chargeback, which not only hurts the merchant, but also the thing to keep in mind is if you've ever done this as a consumer and got your money back through the bank, what's the likelihood of you continuing to use product or service from that merchant you initiated a chargeback? That's something that folks need to keep in mind when they start evaluating lifetime value of a customer and why it's so important.
Tom, you have one more question?
I do, and this one is asking more for I think a personal viewpoint. What's the most common customer service sticking point you see as a consumer, and how would you suggest those businesses solve it?
As an end consumer, I guess it depends on who you're asking. I mean, I guess I go back to my example as a consumer. Is just the experience. If your card's declining, why is it declining? It's super frustrating. And if you're in the environment that you're buying that product, if it's 11 p.m. with the JP Morgan the Chase card, debit card versus 2 a.m., it's going to decline just because of fraud. And so, I don't know. It's interesting. I would say from a consumer, I mean, it's really just the experience of if you're buying a product, and what's the likelihood I'm going to get the product on time and my credit card is going to go through.
For me in this vertical, and looking at what we're talking about today, it's fear. It's fear of the unknown. Did I get ripped off? I don't know what I ordered. I know I saw this infomercial that's supposed to do this. Is that horse really this big, or is it a full-size horse? I think we've all had that experience where we've ordered something or done something and it comes and it's not what our expectation was. So for me, I think it's the fear.
Zach?
Yeah, fear, I agree. Fear is fear of the unknown. Shopping online can be a little bit of a step into the dark for some people that aren't used to doing it. And so fear of knowing, is that product going to ship? I mean, we've kind of touched on it. When that product ships to me, if it's an article of clothing and I don't know if it's really going to fit the way that other sizes do that I used to use or used to wear or used to think fit me, if that size doesn't fit the same, what is the likelihood that I can return it? What is the likelihood that it's going to look good on me? What is that it's going to be the right thing or the right color? I mean, it looks a certain way on the screen, but maybe my screen has a little bit of a different pixelation than the actual product. So So fear, I think, is really key.
Dane?
Yeah, and I was going to jump in. I think from the direct to consumer and the business to business perspective, I think it's very similar in my opinion. Where I think a big concern is accessibility, right? So the accessibility aspect to be able to rectify a situation with a merchant or with a business to solve that problem that might have crept up upon using the service or the good, or something happened during shipping and fulfillment. If you don't know and don't know the person, or you don't have the ability to reach out to that person or rectify the situation at the company, then it's easy for that customer to bail and seek product or goods, services from another vendor.
Right.
I think I'll just jump in and also add, from a marketing point of view, I think personalization, because most of us are talking right now about purchasing products and services online. It's the personalization also that matters. The customization, the content marketing, it all ties together. Besides, creating that feeling, it's always, the lucky winner, as we talk, But who is the persona, as Chris said, and what is it that, is the horse this big or that big? You're right, Michael. I agree. I totally agree. I've had that experience, actually. Tom, I'm wondering.
We had not. Now this is more of a comment that came in, not a question, but I would not be against hearing reactions to the comment. The comment is, my takeaway is the need to be fully transparent to the customer. If that's would that be a good takeaway to take from this? I mean, I think she's nailed it, but what would you say to that?
I think there's got to be a little bit of a limit to that, because too much transparency, at least from my perspective, on physical good, physical product, and shipping of that product, there's got to be a little bit of a limit to it, just because, if supply chain issues we talked about, right? What if you've got a product that is on its way, it's not quite there yet, but you decided to capture the purchaser right before a big event or something, and not necessarily knowing if the product is going to be in the warehouse on time and waiting for it to get there. You've got to. We've talked about timing. Timing is really critical, and you've got to send out the email at the right time. You've got to communicate the tracking number at the right time. You got to give yourself a little bit of runway. So full transparency. If it was full transparency, then as soon as I got the order, as soon as the mouse was clicked, I print the tracking number and then I wait. And there's no movement. I have nothing to share with you. So if I'm full transparent too early, then maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe it leads to unintended consequences. So maybe you got to be a little bit more strategic in when to be transparent. Transparency is great, but timing is a key factor.
And you need to make sure you're giving them the right information, right? You want to be careful with your transparency.
Yeah.
It's like dealing with your kids again. You know what I mean? They need to know, but there's some things they don't need to know as well. You know what I mean? So, it's a scale. You need to weigh, you need to give them the truthful information, but sometimes they don't need to have all of it.
That's interesting.
Great. And I'll say that the commenter came back with, I agree with Zach, maybe not fully but we need to protect ourselves. So be transparent and responsive. I'm going to pop back on here. I would say that, Zach, to your point, the timing of your communications gives the consumer the feeling of full transparency. Is that right?
What you're saying, Tom, it's the word, from a marketing point of view, it's the content of the message, and it's the consistency of the message throughout every touch point in the brand. That's, for me, that's key. Because
I think you look at two things that I use a lot are Shop, and then my good buddy Evan Walker owns Route. He launched Route, and he's just killing it. It's shipping insurance, and it's just basically whether you use the shipping insurance portion of it or you use the tracking. It is interesting. There is full transparency. in that, but it also becomes really frustrating. I had an experience last week where I bought a product from a plug Stio. I don't know if any of you guys are Stio guys, but it's an outdoor gear, and they use Shop. And so I get all this stuff in Shop, and it comes in. I never got my tracking order. It's supposed to be overnighted. I never got anything. Next thing I know, Stio calls me and plays their customer service, which was phenomenal, by the way. But I had a lot of information, and so, but I wasn't getting the information that I wanted. And so I was really irritated because I paid $50 to have it overnighted and it didn't show up. So sometimes full transparency, it kind of goes both ways.
Sure.
Makes sense. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate the time. Thank you to Lori for moderating, to Chris, Mike, Zach, and particularly to Shane for fighting the good fight with me in the background to get yourself here and be on, at least be a voice. So thank you all for taking your time and doing this. Thanks to the Workshop Council. If you're a PDMI member and would like to get involved, you can reach out to me and directly share your interest in the Workshop Council or any of the other 4 councils today. Your next opportunity to attend a PDMI event live online is the next edition of Take 20, our bi-monthly 20-minute webinar series created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. That event is set for Wednesday, January 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and we'll take a look at the intersection of connected TV hardware and media. To register for the webinar, please visit thepdmi.com/take-20. Also, registration and hotel reservations are open now for PDMI East, our next in-person event, slated from March 20 to 22, 2023 at Eden Rock, Miami Beach. Now through December 31st, you can save $100 on your event badge, pay 2022 prices for our first 2023 event through the end of the year. Don't miss out. Visit the pdmi.com/pdmi-east today for more information and to register today. And we are signing off for the last time in 2022 from one of our webinars. So thank you all from the PDMI, from all of our councils, all of our speakers. We appreciate you. We wish you well. We wish you happy holidays. We'll see you in 2023. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.